Welcome to That Annuity Show, the podcast that will make you an expert in explaining annuities to your clients. Give us 30 minutes each week and we'll shave hours from your client presentations. Now, here's your host, Paul Tyler.
Hi, this is Paul Tyler, and welcome to another episode of That Annuity Show. Bruno, it was great to spend time with you in Las Vegas last week.
It was amazing. We first got reunite all of us together to witness, to participate to this wonderful conference. I got out of it with so much positive energy, and kudos to you and your team to be a big part of that.
Yeah. We partnered with Jay Weintraub and Medicarians to bring RetireTech to the big stage, Las Vegas. And Tisa, you played an instrumental role in figuring out how to participate both events and really create a great RetireTech event. Thank you for all the work you did. Good to see you here.
Good morning. Good to see you too.
Are you rested yet?
I'm back on the Eastern time zone, having gone to the West Coast twice in 3 weeks. That was an adjustment in itself, but I think to echo Bruno's comments, a lot of positive energy coming out of it. Obviously, tons of positive energy while we were there for the 3 days, and really walking away with like a kind of a sense of community. Of course, it was the first time the four of us here as hosts were able to spend some time in person, which was wonderful. But even broader than that, there's a really strong community, around these topics and in this space. So that was nice to have time in person and be around that for a few days.
Yeah. Well, I agree. Anyway, listen, we had some great conversations, and we're going to be releasing those as podcasts and sort of drop them out over the next few months. But we're actually going to turn the tables. Ramsey's here. He was there. Ramsey, it was great to see you there, and thank you for time and participation there. We're going to turn the tables a little bit and actually interview Ramsey and your partner Graham Clark. Welcome. Welcome to our show, Ramsey and Graham.
Thank you. This is very sort of like meta. in the generic sense. So,
isn't this like a former cast member hosting Saturday Night Live?
It is.
Okay. There we go.
It's like Conan O'Brien coming back to visit Jimmy Fallon. But
yeah.
Well, listen. First off, we want to hear about your company, but Graham, do you want to just introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and
sure.
a little bit of background, and then we'll dive into what both of you have been focusing on for the last year and a half or so.
Sure. I have 25 plus years of experience, 25 years of experience, starting with investment banks, Merrill Lynch, Citi, and BNP. And I started in structured products, always covered the insurance industry. So I was there at the beginning of all the variable annuity with living benefits when they first rolled out, fixed index annuities. And so I sort of followed that all through my career, and it started with hedging them. And then I've migrated into roles in insurance solutions, corporate finance, and M&A. So I saw companies start products, and then I was involved in advising companies on selling off some of those blocks. And I knew Ramsey because we were, in a sense, competitors. He worked at a different firm, and we would sometimes, meet being at a client event, or he would be walking out of a conference room when I would be walking in to pitch a send client. So that's how we've known each other for some time.
All right. So Ramsey, former competitors, unite. This is a movie. This is good.
Well, it's interesting. So I was similar to Graham. I was in the business for 25 or 30 years, and the last 20 of those I was at Goldman Sachs, and I came to covering the insurance industry sort of midway through that journey at Goldman, and was fortunate enough to build a great practice there from scratch. I always had this policy not to get too close to any of my competitors, right? It was a sort of a small group. So each of us knew, who the other one was. And, it was a really competitive space. I mean, it was metaphorically speaking, a daily knife fight, like to, to get business and win business. And I always felt it was important to have a bit of mystique because I'm generally a pretty constructive personality. If I got to know my competitors too well, I think I'd be too nice. So I kept my distance. But when I left Goldman, I really decided it was worthwhile to get to know some of these folks that I'd competed against because we were all essentially rowing in the same direction and really smart people. And I got again introduced to Graham, more formally through a client, and then a few years back had a situation where I got a call from a venture capitalist that wanted to do something in the space, and I said, well, I need to put together a team to contemplate that, and I was thinking about who are the smartest people I know, and Graham was one of them, and we brought another guy in, and we started a path that ended up being Alex Income, and that's where we are, today, and Alex Income is focusing on, big picture, essentially closing the gap between the traditional defined benefit pension plan that so many of our parents and grandparents had with what most of us have today, which is a defined contribution or 401k plan, and trying to sort of bridge the gap between those two and bring guaranteed income to the broadest possible audience. So anyway, it's been great working with Graham. We've been at it for a few years, and as I said, I'm on here all the time, so we want to hear a lot from Graham on what we're doing, in particular because he's been really a critical part around a lot of the choices we've made on the types of products and a lot of the solutions we've come up with. All right, so I can ask the first question. That's the easiest way.
Bruno, fire away.
Right, go ahead.
Fire away. Well, I think just to set the stage here, and Ramsey, you've touched on that as well. What is the fundamental consumer problem you're trying to solve here? You mentioned 401ks. You mentioned DBs. What is it that you're actually trying to come with in terms of value proposition for the end user, the customer, the client, the retiree or the pre-retiree?
Graham, that's all you.
Okay. So 401k is started in 1978. It was a provision of the tax code that was not designed to be a retirement product or even a savings product, but a guy named Ted Benna discovered, a financial advisor somewhere, discovered that if you read it correctly, it could be used as some type of tax-deferred compensation. So it was originally executive compensation product. And then as it developed, they realized it could be a tax-deferred savings product for any employee. And then once that started happening, legislation, there've been a number of legislative milestones that have made it grow. And so as it grew, it became the sort of standard savings and retirement thing that companies offered. And right now it's up to 7 or 8 trillion of assets in 401k. The problem was, as it was never designed to be a retirement solution, like defined benefit pension plans were, like your father's or your mother's plan, it takes you to age 65 or whenever you retire, and then you're on your own. And so the most common thing people do is roll over into an IRA. Some people would buy an annuity, but they have to go somewhere and get advice. What we're trying to do is put elements in there that make it behave a lot like a defined benefit plan. And a defined benefit plan is basically an annuity that you're getting from your employer. And the amount of the payout on that annuity is a function of what your salary had been, the highest level of your salary over 3 years, subject to a cap. And the way to do that is an embedded annuity into the 401k. 401ks, interestingly enough, in the early days, in the 80s, it was dominated by insurance companies writing GICs, guaranteed investment contracts. And one of the reasons that was told to me was that there was still a little bit of uncertainty about you could take the money out when you contributed. That would be exempt from tax up to a threshold. But the question was whether it would continue to build tax deferred. So invested in GICs, which had insurance contracts that have inside buildup, you didn't have that risk. But that was actually clarified. And then what happened in the 401k space is in the early 90s, I think 1991, there was legislation that passed that allowed mutual funds. And the Fidelity and the others came in and eroded the insurance companies' hold on the 401k space. And so they were diminished to just offering stable value options, which was a small part of 401ks.
Can I just stop 1 second on that key point? Is that this used to be the domain of insurance companies, and now it's not, right? And so what we're doing is an opportunity for insurance companies to reestablish themselves more prominently in the 401k space. So that's a critical theme in the discussions we have. So I'm sorry for interrupting, Graham.
No, that's a good point. Yeah. I mean, Ramsey and I come at it from the insurance and annuity side. We had to learn a lot about 401k and record keeping and DCIO and those aspects of it. It's interesting with that development. The other legislative, not the most recent, but in 2006, the Pension Protection Act was passed, which again gave a big boost to 401k, and that did a couple of things. It increased the limits again. And it allowed something called a qualified default investment alternative, which could be a target date fund or a managed account. What happened then is target date funds, which is an allocation between equities and fixed income that changes over time. Just there's one factor, your age. That became a predominant investment choice because people don't pay attention. They just take what's given to them. And so target date funds started at 3% of 401k assets, and they've continued to grow. Now, over 60 cents of every dollar that goes into 401k is going into that target date fund default. What we're trying to do is now, and others are trying to do this and are succeeding at it, is change the target date fund structure. So part of it is going to put you into an annuity in retirement. If you do nothing, you're going to automatically start getting guaranteed payments. And the reality is that people don't willingly obtain or purchase annuities without advice. And so there's the ability, and Fidelity has a platform, and a company called Hewler have a platform where you can obtain a SPIA as you leave the 401k plan, but the take-up rates are still not tremendously high for that. So our strategy is to basically, we're going to put broccoli in the Big Mac, so we'll get people to eat their vegetables without them really knowing it. Get them into the annuity.
I think I know that, Graham. Sorry, I wouldn't know that.
and get them to do the right thing and educate them as to why they should keep the annuity. At any time they could get out of it.
So this is such a critical point, right? So, and I think Graham's statistics are very telling here. So most people take the strategy they're given when they sign up for a 401k. Most of the time, that is a target date fund, and so now in this absolutely enormous market, most money, right? So 60% on every new dollar, right, goes automatically into target date funds. So therefore, if you want to be a factor in this space, the most effective way to reach the broadest possible audience is to deliberately pursue a strategy where you can qualify to be part of that qualified default alternative, as opposed to just being an option on the platform that somebody can elect into. And so this is an important point because it in many ways it dictates who our target audience is, as a company. So Graham talked about sort of the role of insurers in the past and how they've been sort of on the sidelines. We can bring them back in. So we want to reach insurers. We want to work with insurers. They want to be part of that revolution. Asset managers play a critical role in this because in addition to sort of the guaranteed income portion, there is a meaningful, actually usually more than 50%. So say on balance over the life of over the life of a strategy, between 40 and say 80%, depending on the age, is invested in equity. So asset managers have a role. And then the last people we would mention that are sort of product providers would be record keepers, who essentially administer all the various pieces of the puzzle. And then, of course, we all ultimately work for plan sponsors. And so, we ultimately have to develop a product with the three partners that we just described and make the case to plan sponsors who are fiduciaries and who will make sure that the product that ends up as the default for the end users will have been thoroughly vetted at an institutional quality level, in a way that I think would be harder to do consistently, on an individual basis.
And just to scale this, the 401k market is somewhere between $7 trillion and $8 trillion. I saw an article that referenced Cerulli Associates saying that it will be $10 trillion by 2027. There's about $600 billion that's rolling out, either withdrawals or people rolling over at age 65. But there's also just under $600 billion of money coming in each year. And so it's a big market. I mean, last year was a record in the individual annuity market, well over 300 million of sales. But if 60%, if everybody in 401k had a guaranteed income structure, particularly the type that we're suggesting, 60+% of 600 billion, that's 360 billion each year. And if we want to, we can go into why this could be more attractive for a carrier to write than some retail stuff.
Graham, can you double click on something you said about rollover? So you made the point that 600 million, was it 600 million?
600 billion.
Billion, yeah, sorry, yeah. 600 billion is rolling out every year. Right?
And that could be people withdraw. I mean, there could be early with penalty withdrawals. It could be people switching jobs and rolling over to IRA, and then the bulk of it's going to be age 65. And we're at peak 65 this year, as everybody on this podcast knows.
But the further double click is in the old version of a 401k, where at 65 everybody's expected to leave. Like, so the employee may want to leave. The employer is like, yeah, time to go. Like under this new construct that we've come up with, we've created an incentive for both parties to stay in plan after 65. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes.
Why that's important? Yeah.
There's friction when you roll over, when someone rolls over, because when you leave, and again, this is something we didn't know about 401k. When you leave 401k, you don't take your funds with you. They turn everything into cash and wire it to you, and you can put it into an IRA and reacquire some of the assets that you had. But there can be tremendous friction there. It's like, so people lose on average a few hundred basis points right when that happens. But set aside the annuity, the asset management component, the fees on target date funds, the equity and bond funds that are incorporated in a target date fund are very, very low, substantially lower than retail fees. If you can stay in plan and continue to, and if the plan has an investment menu and plus you have the annuity, you're going to, there's a lot of fee savings. And it used to be the record keepers, a lot of them had a rollover business as well. Take Fidelity and Empower, the two largest. They make a lot of money on rollovers for the fees that they start getting after retirement. But a lot of the record keeping business is now per capita, so per head and not AUM based, which is the record keeping is a brutally tough business. But if you keep people for longer, then the record keepers can earn fees for longer. And we talked to one plan sponsor, probably the most successful in doing guaranteed income in plan. They viewed it as having the people stay in through retirement actually lowered their overall average plan cost per participant. So that I think that's a trend that's developing, is to keep people in plan.
Yeah. Well, let's maybe we could talk a little bit about. There's a lot there. Right. Let's sort of pick a few pieces apart. Let's maybe, Tisa, do you want to pick into the what actually happens at the employee level?
Yeah, I was going to ask, I think if I'm hearing you correctly, and, correct me if I'm wrong, the phase of where you're at is more on the plan sponsor carrier side of working through the system and platform implementation. But what work, if any, or what work in the future around changing behavior, that education curve are you doing to the actual plan participant, the end client, the end consumer around understanding, why the benefits for them?
Well, sure. Well, let's talk about let me set the table with what's out there. There's several different product designs that are offered, and if I can mention names, I'll do that if that's okay. But there's products where you have a target date fund, and starting at a certain age, 47 to 50, you start acquiring a wrap, which is like a variable annuity guarantee with a lifetime withdrawal benefit. And that would be like Income America or AllianceBernstein. That's one design. Second design is what Annexus is, Retirement Solutions is pushing, which is starting at age 50, I think, you start moving away from the target date fund investing, and a portion each year, you increase an investment in a fixed index annuity. And they're currently doing it with Nationwide and Athene. But at age 65, you have 65% of your assets in that fixed index annuity and the rest in the target date fund. The BlackRock version starts at age 55, allocating money towards the annuity account, which will acquire a regular annuity at age 65. Our preference is for flexible premium deferred annuity. And that's what the Teachers is doing, their SIA product. Our idea, which I think was referred to by Carrie, is a secret sauce. It's not a secret, is starting it earlier. Our analytics says you start allocating to the annuity and replacing the fixed income sleeve of the target date fund as early as age 40, you're going to get outperformance. So what does this mean for the participant? If a participant is in our product, starting at age 40, the allocation would be 90% equities, 10% fixed income in most target dates. That fixed income is going to start investing in the annuity. The participant doesn't know that unless they really read the documents, which they appear not to because so many of them are just accepting the default. Between that time and the time that they retire, they will receive communications and education about how this protected income account works, why, how it accumulates each year. It can never go down. And we have a user experience, an app that we've prototyped that shows them at current annuity crediting rates, this is and how much they've contributed. This is how much income they're going to get per month in retirement. If rates went to the absolute floor that's guaranteed, this is what that income would be, and also illustrate if they continue to contribute what that income would be. And you have something similar with some of these other designs, but the idea is it's in the default. So they probably don't even know that they're, have an annuity or annuity type guarantee in their 401k for a while until the plan, the company, and whoever's working with them who built this educates them. We know Raytheon, who was very successful with they did an AllianceBernstein product a long time ago. There's 12 communications that go to the participant between the time they join the 401k plan and retire, designed to educate them about this.
Sorry, let me just ask a question here. So, a lot of interesting things. Tisa raised the issue of how do you get the people to actually want to use them? I guess I see a lot of implications. If we had an annuity in an account, first of all, I should say, well, maybe, I don't know, Graham, maybe returns are going to be lower because now these people are putting them in annuities, which really is insurance. So, they're going to have to save more. And tell me what you think. I could say, look, it actually gives employees a chance to almost adopt more of a barbell strategy where if I know I've got protected income over here, can I now take much more aggressive positions with my 401k because I've got that floor in my 401k?
I agree with that 100%. Right now, the way most people are looking at it is they're keeping their target date allocation on the portion that's not an annuity the same, but I think you can risk up. It's really what we've lived in a world. Everybody on this podcast, our entire careers, our entire adult lives has been based on total return fixed income investment outperforms. we've also lived in a world where interest rates generally have been coming down from 18% to 0 and back to 4 or 5. Depending on what the world looks like in the future, total return investing might not be the best thing. But the thing about our type of annuity design, that where the crediting rate resets every year, it can perform as well or outperform total return bond fund that would be typically in a 401k. The key, and I'm going to say two things here. One, this might be upsetting to people who are in the target date fund business. To us, studying them as outsiders, they look a lot the same. The people in the business say that my target date fund's radically different than this guy's, but they all, 85 to 90% equities at age 40 and below, down to 40 to 50%, 50 to 60% equities at retirement, 40 to 50% fixed income. Our thing was, being annuity geeks, as we all are, we thought that annuity designs were vastly different than the types of target date fund glide paths, right? A VA chassis to me is very different than an FIA, is very different than a traditional deferred annuity. It's very different than a flexible premium deferred annuity or QLAD. So what we did was we said, let's just take one target date fund and attach these different annuity designs in the way some of these existing products in the market are. And what we found is, it'll make sense when I explain why, is that starting the annuity earlier gave better results. And the reality is most of these annuity offerings that are in plan have book value accounting. And what I mean by that is there's no surrender or market value adjustment typically when the participant leaves. So they're floored every year. That portion of their target date fund cannot go down. Now, what happens in the stochastic scenarios that we ran and that we had Canex run for us, between age 40 and 65, you've got a very good chance of 1 or 2 or 3 major drawdowns in the market, which is not just equity drawdowns, but fixed income drawdowns. So in 2008, target date funds went down 30%. In 2022, target date funds went down 20%. Now, if you're getting closer to retirement, and 40% of your money is in fixed income, and it drops 20%. That's what happened in 2022, and that's what happened in 2008. And it really damaged people who are 60 plus. If you've taken that away, if you've carved away that downside risk, then you generate outperformance there. And we're not about excess return. We're about not losing money. This is 401k. It's a very litigious space. It's all about protecting the downside. And what we found is, starting the annuity earlier, you're going to probably eliminate another one of those major drawdown events from hurting you. And that's what generates the performance. And that applies to all these other designs, but we think ours does a little bit better.
Yeah, I think it's important to say that while we have a fairly strong opinion about what the best implementation is, we generally are supportive of guaranteed income in whatever form in plan, available in plan, versus the current state, which is generally not yet widely available. So we're advocates, we're evangelists for in-plan solutions. We just think that after, based on a lot of years of experience and a lot of analytics, we've focused on the version that is easiest to use for the consumer. It is ultimately easiest to risk manage for carriers. And since the opportunity set is so large here, like if it really takes off, like even more capital will be required to be invested in the insurance industry to actually provide this risk. We think that scalability is sort of a very important element of it. One thing I wanted to sort of go back to, Tisa, sort of to address your question about sort of customer education, and Graham touched on this, is the fact that we've gone through the process of developing an app interface. We've wireframed an app interface, and a critical element of it is to try and answer the question that most people are trying to answer when they think about, well, what would I have experienced if I had a pension plan? And the answer is, if I had my grandpa's pension plan, I would know at age 65 I'm going to receive X% of my final salary. right? 70%, 50%, whatever it happens to be, right? Like Tisa, I think you said that your father was a government worker, right? So I assume that like that was a framework he was able to sort of rely on.
Yep.
That's what we're trying to replicate. It's not just the guaranteed income, but helping communicate it to people in a way so they can translate it into, well, I know that I made $100,000. I'll make $100,000 at age 65. When I retire, I won't be working anymore, but I can expect roughly $75K a year. That's a framework we want to use to help educate people that, and particularly to be able to have that framework 30 years before retirement. And so that's the spirit with which the app was designed.
Yeah.
And Graham, maybe you can talk a little bit further about some of the, you came up with some very interesting ideas that we incorporated around actually doing this for people of different career arcs.
Well, what we did was with let me say the flip side of that, the participants' experience is being able to see what their income looks like, current crediting and minimum crediting to date, through contributions to date and contributions through retirement. The flip side is that's very valuable for the employer to know. So the employer, we have in our model, we can put in different industries and you have the average salary. And we know salary growth has been 3% per annum across the United States since 2020. So I can put in the salary curve for an employee. If I know he's an auto worker and he's 40, I can tell you he makes this much per year right now, and it's going to go up at 3% per annum. Now that could change. The automaker itself has a lot more detailed. Their HR department knows a lot more about that, and they obviously can make it very more specific. But with that, then we model, target date fund with Alex income, and then with some different assumptions, and then all these things can be flexed or stochastically modeled. We can say that employee is going to be making $150,000 a year at age 65, but with Alex income, he's going to be making, his projected income is $135,000 a year, because the target really is 90% of your final salary, then plus some cushion for inflation. But for the employer, that's very valuable because they would like to know, are my employees on track to retire? Or am I going to have an issue with people that I would like to be moving on, if they're sticking around and they're not as productive as they could be or should be because they don't have enough money to retire. And then so you can give them, the employer, you can calculate if they were under a DB plan, based upon the IRS rules that govern that and DOL rules, this is what they would be getting if they had a DB. And this is what Alex income is going to get. Is it better? Is it worse? And if it's worse, do I need to increase my match? Do I need to bump salaries up so people can be saving more? Do I need more education? I think that's very valuable. There's another backdrop to that, and it actually relates to something that's happened today. Unions are getting more power in the U.S. And I follow Sean Fain, all of his Facebook live broadcasts. He wants the DB back. Their strategy, They got a lot of money out of the automakers this fall with the strikes, coordinated strikes. They want more. And their strategy to get more is to unionize every auto worker in America and then ask for DB back. And so if you're a plan sponsor and you're in that space, it's good. Now's a good time to think about, can you improve your DC offering to be more DB like that to avoid getting to have that battle in the future. And there's a huge plant in Tennessee today that's voting on the UAW.
Oh, it's fascinating. We heard a little bit about talk about that at our Retire Tech event. I know we're kind of close to the top of our time. I guess a lot to discuss here. No shortage. Bruno, any last question or thought for the group?
Well, I just love the idea of a very measured approach. I think that a lot of there's a lot of misconception out there that as soon as you talk about an annuity, lifetime income, or any type of lifetime income solution, things have to be done entirely all at once, and you clearly have a method, an approach that makes sure that people eat their broccolis very, very smoothly. Right. So I think that's a point that I'd like to emphasis on.
I'd like to make one final point. I know I tend to speak too much. the people that are in this space, the companies that are going after it, the sort of the market leaders, they're getting traction. People are saying that 2024 is an inflection point, and it seems to be. From what the press releases this year and what we learned at the Napa conference in Nashville a week or two ago, BlackRock, who's been pushing at this is their second major attempt post the Secure. They did something years ago. They've got $27 billion of plan assets committed, and a big chunk of them are actually on Fidelity's record-keeping platform, and the money's moving this month, so that's happening. We've heard that Nuveen Teachers, who has an approach similar to what we like, has maybe 18 billion of commitments. Income America has 5,000 plan signups. They're very small, but that covers 11,000 participants. Not sure what, Alliance Bernstein, with what they did with Raytheon years ago, they still have 16 billion of assets. So this is growing it's more than doubled since last year. My personal view is when that headline number gets to be 100, 150 billion, then we get real growth. And this does not include situations where companies have the SPIA option, like it's available on Fidelity's platform, or what the big three automakers did agree to last fall is a SPIA option through Hewler, and each of the big three automakers are offering that, and I think Boeing is offering that as well. So that's not as good as starting earlier in plan, but it's happening, and that's the biggest pushback we've heard. Is this has never happened. This has been, people have tried this before. It didn't happen. We don't see it happening now. It actually is happening now.
Yeah, like a few things I think are catalysts for that. So the Secure Act version 1.0 was really the sort of unleash the hounds moment, right? It gave safe harbor around selection of carriers, et cetera. Then we had a pandemic. So you have this 3-year sort of delay and distraction. So we have a confluence of a lot of things happening. So the legislative backdrop that's 5 years old is actually sort of now most relevant. We're seeing a lot of big players. So Graham mentioned several of them already. Are all approaching this market, according to their own sort of personal preferences. I will call it. We're starting to see record keepers who, as I mentioned earlier, in some ways were sort of gatekeepers in this space, really starting to invest in the capability that will facilitate this. And so things are changing a lot. There's a lot of survey data that you'll get from Alliance for Lifetime Income and other places about the desire to have income options. But I actually think that what we're seeing from the unions, which Graham has pointed out, is, to me, perhaps most indicative. Lastly, we're starting to see the first signs of FOMO. We talk to asset managers, carriers, record keepers, lots of people all the time, and we're just now starting to hear from some of these folks saying, well, yeah, the consultants are starting to ask us questions about this, and we don't have a solution yet. And so that's where we come in, is that we spent the last essentially almost 3 years really sussing this market out. If you're an asset manager, if you're a carrier, if you're a record keeper, if you're an advisor, if you want to be relevant in this space much more quickly than you could ever do it on your own, right, then we are your potential partner, and we should have a discussion, and that's the kind of work we do on an engaged basis. In the long run, we are revenue sharing partners. We want to actually build out platforms. Like, once these consortiums are done, we want to build out platforms and stand shoulder to shoulder with you as you pitch to plan sponsors, so company 401k plans, and then we will have some mutually agreeable revenue share over the life of the structure. So that's what we're seeking to do, and it's been an exciting run. And anyway, thanks for having us on the show.
Yeah, Tisa, thoughts?
Yeah, so clearly huge opportunity. I mean, the billions and trillions numbers that you're sharing, huge market and the opportunities there. I guess maybe two thoughts in closing. The analogy of sneaking in the vegetables, yes, and doing it sooner. Doing that or thinking about it and explaining at 38, 40 versus the panic at 58 or 60. Like, how am I going to make this happen in the next 2 to 5 years? is one thing I heard you say. And I guess you sparked a few things in my mind, including I went and logged into my Fidelity account to be like, wait, am I in a target date fund? So like the idea, like, I'm in the space and I'm like, set it and forget it. I'll worry about that in 20 years. So maybe I'm a good case study here. But my point in saying that is I just feel like a lot of the education is more around thinking through your living expenses in retirement or your goals, and then giving you some astronomical huge number to say, well, this is how much you're going to need. Right. And and it feels daunting, and it's more of the accumulation story. So thinking more about the income story and saying to me, okay, in 30 years, you're going to need this much to live on. And so do you need $80,000 a year? Do you need $120,000 a year? It's just a different way to talk about it. But it feels more achievable. It's a much smaller number than the huge nut of what I need to have in 25 years. So, kudos to what you're doing and shifting the industry. I think it's going to be most beneficial to American retirees, reaching their goals. So your bigger why of shifting the success of American workers, I think is great. So thank you for your time today.
Yeah. I think, Graham, you kind of alluded to it, which is, listen, getting the Americans on track is good for the employers, it's good for the employees, it's good for the country, good for a lot of people. So, thanks for doing this. We have a lot of questions I think we didn't get to. Like, I think, Graham, one of my Post-it notes that I had on the wall here for 5 years was go through my stray 401k plans and roll them over. And you mentioned friction. Wow. It took me 2 weeks.
I didn't know when I joined Ramsey and we started looking at this. You can roll over your 401k to the 401k at your new employer. I didn't know that. I had 3 different bank jobs. I rolled over to an IRA. You don't have to do that. You can actually leave it at your employer in most places. You don't have to. Yeah. I think Ramsey still has a 401k at Goldman Sachs. Is that not?
Yeah, that's PII, dude.
Oh, well, he didn't roll over. I would have rolled over. I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah,
but you can't. It's cheaper than being in an IRA.
Yeah. It's there are so many issues here. Technology, I think, incentives, right? Because a lot of these employers, good for the unions to do this. A lot of employers, as you know, it costs a lot less if you have fewer choices, and puts fees on the employees. And I think all those equations have got, the math's got to change here. So look, Ramsey, Alex. How do I find Alex Income? AlexF.FYI. Do you have a domain for it?
It's a great question. So the Alex FYI has historically been sort of my business. Alex Income is where I'm spending the vast majority of my time. It is the totality of what Graham and I are working on together. It is the totality of this institutional 401k focused solution that we've come up with. So AlexIncome.com is it's live, and it's a site that is in development. So it's going to get better and better as time goes on. And we would welcome sort of inbound discussion and calls. Ramsey at Alex.FYI, Graham at Alex.FYI. And we're very excited about what all this means for U.S. retirement.
All right. Well, listen. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for being a good guest, Ramsey. And,
I probably deserved it after all this time, after dishing it out for 220 episodes or however many we've done.
Yeah. I know you had a great conference at Napa. I think the panel discussion you had with Scott was really good, and we'll package that up as a podcast hopefully next month or two. So, listen, thanks for being here. Want to thank our listeners. Keep feedback coming. It's always helpful to get notes. It's great when we get positive feedback, but if you don't like any of our shows, tell us too, because we want to know.
Except this one.
This is the broccoli. So anyway, listen, join us again next week for another great episode of That Annuities Show. Thanks.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend us on iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information at thatannuityshow.com.